Well, hello and welcome to our webinar. We're really pleased to have everyone with us. The topic for today, Beyond Build versus Buy, Pragmatic Last Mile Software in the AI Era. My name is Tony Butler and I'm joined by Michał Zgała, hopefully I pronounced that right, Michał, our Software Mind Delivery Manager, and also Michał Mołdrzyk, Logistics Software Delivery Director at Software Mind. It's great to have you with us, Michał and Michał. Perhaps we can just come to you and you can briefly introduce yourselves to our audience.
Yes, thank you, Tony, for having us, and welcome all the viewers. We are representing this business unit of logistics of Software Mind, and for last 10 years we are handling most difficult challenges, technological challenges in the logistic business with technology. We completed more than 30 projects during that time, from consultings from leading operators through developing courier apps, Pudo apps, lots of integrations, and also the full TMS softwares from scratch. And on the systems that we developed, more than 340 million parcels are delivered every year.
So thank you, Michał, for this invitation. Hello, everyone. As Tony Butler said, I'm a director of the logistics service unit in the Software Mind. For over 20 years in the IT industry, but almost for 15 years dedicated to logistics, last mile solution. We deliver a lot of interesting projects in the past, and we want to share our view from our experience and trends that we see on the market on today's meeting.
Excellent, thank you. So nice to have you both with us. And so we've got lots to look forward to in our webinar, I'm sure. So just a little bit of housekeeping for everyone that's joined us. If you have any questions throughout our discussion, then please write them in the Ask a Question box at the bottom of your screen on the right-hand side, and then we'll endeavour to get to those questions at the end of our webinar. So we've got a packed agenda. Let's get started. Now, Michał, I guess you've already given us a little bit of insight into why Software Mind, why are we qualified to talk of this topic. So that's good. Was there anything else you wanted to share on that before we sort of get started, or should we get straight into it?
Let's get straight to the point.
Okay, so I guess just a question to perhaps to ask you, Michał, that when we look at sort of traditional last mile delivery companies, courier companies, they would typically, I guess, have had either a CapEx model or an OpEx model that would really drive their strategy. And I guess that's pretty much common across most companies. And that strategy would be to buy a ready-made platform, perhaps a SaaS platform, or build from scratch. And they really were the only two options that organizations have. With the potential adoption of AI into the mix, how are those choices affected? Perhaps you can give us some insight on that.
Yeah, Tony. So for last decades, there was this dilemma to buy a software or to build a software, and each proposition looks like a complete offer. So you had buy option, which was very low entry in terms of cost. It was very proven. You know what you're buying. It was low risk choice, but in the same time, you had to adapt your software to the constraints that vendor software, that you had to adapt your organization to the constraints of the SaaS software, and you had zero code and data ownership, and also the cost of the software very low at the initial stage, but it compounds over the time of usage, of license usage. And the hidden cost here was lock-in. And on the other hand, you had the build options. So building everything from scratch, getting the full personalization, so you could build something that's tied entirely for the exact needs of your organization, but in the same time you get full bill for that. So months spent over the project, millions of euros, and the hidden cost here was rebuilding modules that were previously developed in the SaaS software, and these modules are nothing new, but you had to build it from scratch. But you get the full control, and you get the control over the data, control over the code, and you could just put this software into any direction that your organization need.
Cool. But I guess now we've got something else in the mix. Is that right?
Yeah, it changed. It changed right now, like it changed 10 years ago with the cloud revolution and Open API, where you can just don't settle into buy whole software suite or build whole software suite, but you could just take the best of the breed software for different module and just tie it with API. Right now with AI, it's another jump that we can see, another big change in that equation.
So how has AI affected that then?
Well, from our perspective, the whole debate is rested on the assumption that building is very slow and very expensive. But right now, building gets very fast, and writing code is pretty fast right now. So the change that we can see with the BERI is you can write a code in no time. So the bar to build the software drops very hard, but in the same time, writing in enterprise software is just a part of the cost. And Gartner says that it's like 20 or 30, maximum 30% of the total ownership cost, and the rest is maintenance, and is keeping the software safe, secure, scalable, maintain it over the time. So that cost is not entirely affected by AI, and sometimes it's even growing with AI software development. So the other change is that AI features that are really interesting right now and unlocking lots of business potential, they make impact only on the architecture that is ready for it. So if you have legacy software from 20 years ago, probably gluing the AI modules into that won't work that well. And also with the code generation getting cheaper and cheaper, the lock-in, it moves from owning the code, because it's super cheap right now, to owning the data, because data is enabler to owning the data is enabler to use all these beautiful AI features that we see around us. So, and also there's one question that I want to say loud, because we are getting these inquiries from customers from time to time, that someone is coming with the software that they vibe coded over the weekend and comparing it to the enterprise software that the whole company runs on. And from our perspective, that's a completely wrong way of seeing it, because all these vibe-coded applications are very cheap on production, cheap on entry, but over the distance, it's unmaintainable. If you want to change something on production at 3 a.m., there's no one who understands how it works, and no one who can just fix it in no time to keep the operations going. So to sum up, the AI, from my perspective, it doesn't settle the buy versus build debate. It just moves the line of what to build and what we should buy. So the question is a wrong starting point, but we can find a better one.
Interesting. So just thinking about, I guess, those three options that we've now got, how do we take the upside of build, where we get exactly what we want, the upside of buy, where we don't have to wait potential years to get something tangible, and the upside of the acceleration of AI? How do we take all of those, or the upsides of all of those, those three, but at the same time managing the risk of each one? How do we do that?
That's a great question, Tony. So we have few ways to approach that, and I the first one I call concept A. It's probably the easiest one to imagine. So just take something and write it all with AI, with the human control over it and getting the results. And it's a good option, but only in few scenarios. But and if you have the system that is very very low risk, that is not sitting on the operational data, and you don't need high maintainability, the cost of mistake is very low on that system. You can use AI and gain this amazing speed of development everywhere where a mistake is cheap, and you can just use it in a fast way. So all the prototypes, all the proof of concepts, internal tools, places like that. And for the business critical applications, we have the different concept that is basing on this build versus buy dilemma, and then splitting it into parts. So you should buy or lease the core modules, the modules that your operation is standing on. They are tried and tested, maintainable, secure, and these are the modules that works well in lots of courier operations. That they are already developed. We don't have to invent the wheel here. But also you have to map your most important features, your edge, and write it fast with AI, but on this healthy backbone foundation that has high maintainability. So you get speed, and you get maintainability, and you get your edge and ownership of the code and the data at the same time. So to put it into the example, based on our last mile experience and typical last mile software, you should buy or lease this 70%, which are core modules, right? Order management, the dispatch module, courier app with proof of delivery, the cloud infrastructure that everything sits on. Then you can add the swappable modules that are business specific for your needs, for your operations, like your favorite routing engine, or the navigations that your couriers love. The geocoding module that works best in your geographical location, or the payment module that is very hard to develop because of regulatory reasons. And on top of that, you build your edge, your 30%, the features that only you have, that are building your moat, your competitive moat. So it can be volume prediction basing on your data. It can be custom estimated time of arrival calculation basing on your algorithm, or automated exception handling that is tied to your operational processes. And that's the second way, and most optimal one from our perspective in the AI age. And looking at the cost curve, it's somewhere between buying and building, because you're buying few core modules and then you're building on it, but without the compounding cost of licensing over the time. Also, if you compare it to the SaaS model, we see 4 hidden costs that you're skipping here and have in the previous model. So The first one is the ownership of the lost valuation of the company due to not owning the data, not owning the code, because tech-enabled companies that are building competitive edge over the technology are valued way more than the regular operators. Also, the ownership of the code, so you can't build AI features on it very fast, but your vendor is getting that ultimate speed on their side. So you are losing that opportunity. Also, without owning the data, it means you can't put AI on top of it and train it to your actual needs, and also the exit costs. So after you outgrow the model and want to build your own, it is still the migration of the data and migration of the software is still a project on its own.
Interesting. I mean, it's interesting that you bring up cost, and I'm sure perhaps on the minds of some of our listeners, we see the need for AI, but AI usage also comes with a cost. So how do we manage that growing cost of AI?
Yeah, that's true, Tony. And from our experience, the projects with high AI usage are sometimes just bleeding money. So we have few principles that we are following in our projects to prevent from that situation. The first one is we are always thinking about possibility of swapping models, because the industry is growing very fast and new models are developed almost overnight, and everything is changing very, very fast. So we are building the systems so the models are swappable. And also with that comes another thing, that we are choosing the right model for the job. So for very complex tasks, all the frontier models with high token costs, but for the more everyday tasks, we are choosing cheaper models that also does the job very well. And also shrinking the context helps. So making scope of work and prompts very, very small. So we are using less tokens and generating less errors. And also we are using classic machine learning everywhere where it's possible, because it's way cheaper and more reliable.
Interesting.
Yeah, so now I would like to sum up our approach on this topic. So from our perspective, build versus buy dilemma right now in AI era is at the beginning you should lease or buy the backbone and not build the commodity module from scratch, and just focus your resources and your budget on what's your edge, what's your 30%, what is competitive and unique for your operations, and you can write it fast on AI, but on the healthy backbone. And also keep in mind the maintainability and engineering for low cost of such solutions. Yeah, and as we see the need on the market for such model, so the solution providing core modules and very fast later development, and also the business model providing ownership of your data and or of your code, we packed it into something we called TMS framework. It's not SaaS, it's not custom from zero. It's our solution to get very fast results of building a new TMS, super fast, AI ready, and basing on enterprise core modules that we are developing for last 10 years for multiple companies, and we have huge experience in doing that.
Interesting. Now, I guess that all sounds good, but up to now we've, I guess, been talking theory. We've got looking at some good slides, etc. But at the outset, you mentioned, different clients you've got, and the years of experience. So this model that you've just been talking about, and this perhaps different approach, does it actually work in real life? You've got any examples that we can share with the audience?
Yeah, so it's a pretty fresh concept, as the whole AI revolution is a pretty fresh thing, but we do have a very interesting business case, the recent go live with TMS framework that we can brag about a little bit. So it was for the company, the European operator, last mile operator, but the company core business was to produce and deliver ready-to-eat meals, very specific operation, not the same as different courier companies. So they needed very specific software. They are delivering 300,000 meals, so packed into 100 parcels a day. And maybe a day is a wrong word, because they are delivering overnight in the cold chain, very time critical operation with narrow time window, which makes them very, very specific. And the problem they bring to the table to solve it together was very specific either, because their business was growing super fast, 75% year on year volume growth, and the current solution that they were using was breaking at that scale. So there were crashes during peak hours. Map screen window was loading for more than 20 seconds, making the system unable to use. And also, as the operations was pretty specific, there was no out-of-box solution on the market. So they were running on 5 different SaaS solutions with Excel connecting them together, but in the same time getting 5 times licensing and 5 times data lock-in with manual labor sticking it together, causing many mistakes and a big cost.
Yeah,
and
wow.
a big cost.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm guessing. I mean, what you've described there is probably, I'm sure some of our listeners think, well, you're actually just describing one of our challenges. It's probably not unique just to this one. So you've highlighted the problem that they have. How would you suggest that challenge would be approached? What have you got some guidance on that?
Yeah, so I can tell you how we approach this one, and maybe some guidance will come out of it. So we started by sitting at the table and defining their 30%, the things that are unique for their operation. So in that case, that was, of course, the cold chain. The whole delivery should be monitored for keeping the right temperature. The big unique thing there was that the delivery was overnight. Most courier companies are delivering during the day. They had overnight delivery with all the problems that comes with it, like they cannot courier just cannot call the recipient and ask for the directions. So geocoding level had to be very high. I will come to that on the next part. And also the first time delivery was very important, because there was no another attempt after missing the delivery window. Food was just food had to be just thrown away. So it was a big waste and a big reputation cost. And also they wanted the simplicity to cut off all the unneeded features and to stick to the very simple system that is serving them well, but without all the fluff, all the additional features that regular courier software often have. So how it looks in the practice. So from our framework, we took all the core modules. So the order intake, the dispatch module, the courier app with proof of delivery, real-time tracking of the delivery progress, multi-hub architecture and user management module, and the cloud infrastructure that everything was sitting on. And the 30% that we mapped, we crafted into unique features that makes them competitive and unique. So it was route optimization that was not basing only on algorithm, but on the data from couriers from the field. It was a specific way to approach the address data quality, and also cold chain telemetry imported from the vehicles in real time, and custom API integrations with all the internal systems in the company, and deliberate simplicity. So we took only the modules they need and nothing else. So I told you about this geocoding issue, and I would like to talk a little bit in detail about that because it was very interesting, and it shows how these unique features can translate into the software in this modular approach. So we took the regular geocoding engine from the market off the shelf, and it gave us 99% accuracy. So at 100,000 per night, 1%, it's 700 just wrongly geocoded addresses, and another around 1,000 that was resolved to the level of the street, not to the door level. Which means during the night operations, 1,700 times the courier was just searching for the right location in the dark, without being able to call anyone to find the location. So it was very business critical to pump that number, to find a solution to get better results. So we solved it with another data layer where we get the informations from multiple geocoding providers and then weighted internally against each other to see which provider gives us the best address for every case. And out of that, we get much better accuracy, which was 99.8. So less than 200 parcels per night were wrongly geocoded, and that was a big gain for this case.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you'd sort of think 1%, oh, that's probably okay, but when you're talking about those numbers, that's a lot of potential sort of parcels not delivered, isn't it? Wow, that's great. I'm sure the company was very happy with those results after that. But you before you mentioned about cost and so forth. So how does this approach that you've taken? The results are great, but how did that affect budget and timeline?
Okay, that's interesting part. So in that case, we managed to reduce the regular time of building the new software from scratch. That is probably 2 years or even more. We managed to reduce it to 6 months. And we are counting this time not only for pure coding, but everything from first interview to the operational go live of the whole operation. And yeah, that's a huge reduction from my perspective. And what's more important, it was operational from day one, and go live went with zero downtime, with zero critical errors. In the same time, you can imagine how with such a reduction of the time also came reduction of the cost of the whole solution, and in the same time they get total ownership of their data, and they are able right now to tackle all the possibilities that came with AI, and also deliver new features with super low time to market. They are delivering new features almost every day with AI augmented software development.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I told about this super low time to market, and I would like to show you a little demo how fast on that in that solution we can develop a new features. And in that scenario, I wanted to there's a business case in the working software of adding a new dashboard of that is counting how much actual money are lost on undelivered parcels, and there are some extra variations that you have to be able to set actual costs of another attempt on the user interface level, and let's see how fast our developer can provide this function. We are working on the existing data in the system, so there is no integration in the backend layer. So it's a little bit faster and less risky, but that's example how does the AI augmented development looks like. And on the you can see the timer, it's counting actual minutes of work over it.
Oh.
And now you can see the results. It's we added the new analytics panel with costs of one retry on the slider, and split into the reasons of undelivery, and also the costs per week, per month, per year. So a great panel for every manager to track the actual cost of one deliveries. And as an example, let's say that we would like to see who loses most money, which courier is losing most money. So let's add the split for cost per courier. So we see the total cost, and let's add another layer with the split into the couriers, and also on the sliders we will see the split for different modes of undelivery. Okay, 35 minutes it took our developer to add that feature, and we can see pretty neat dashboard with all this data updated every day.
I guess the traditional way would take a lot longer than that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's actually a good question to take back home. So the question is how fast in your current system that your company is using adding such feature will take.
Yeah.
And it's a great question to examine if your operation is ready for this AI era.
We might not want to know the answer. It's too long. So just listening to you, I mean, I guess like between the two of you, it's a huge amount of experience. How can our audience listening in, how can they use your experience perhaps in their operation? Is there a method that you can share with them that they can take back into their own organizations of things that they could do?
Yes, Tony, thank you for that question, and let me handle this part. So moving from the case study to some kind of tool that everybody can use in their own organization to evaluate the current state. So we prepared the tool based on the three general questions, and those questions can be asked to assess the current situation and help you go to the entire process and resolve the dilemma build versus buy. So the first question is about the commodity versus advantage. And as Michał said on the previous part of the presentation, is very important to ask this question at the beginning, because I have seen a lot of companies that invest in the wrong places. They try to develop and build the part of the software that is just should work, but they forgot about the part of the solution that make really difference. So, Michał, can you move to next slide, please? So it's very important to ask this question, because this question helps you avoid the very costly mistake that you can make when you made the final decision about the budget, involving the vendors, or choosing the proper technology. To help our viewers with assessing this assessment and try to answer this question, because it's very generic question, but the devil is in the details. So if you move to the next slide, we prepare the list of the additional questions you can ask yourself, your teams, your IT, your vendor, and your operation, that gives you better view where is my commodity, where is my advantage, because usually the commodity is more obvious than the advantage in the companies. And back to the case Michał showed, the commodity was obvious: the courier app, the tracking screen, the dispatcher module, but no customer chose this operator because of their better tracking screen. The real edge was much narrow. That was the address data quality for the night delivery without the customer interaction. So the small flawless number, 0.8% increase in the success of first delivery. That was the advantage, and that was the first part of the project we have to do before we start the implementation. So ask yourself, try to assess where is your commodity and where is your advantage. Then we can move to the next question.
Yeah, they're good questions.
So the second question is about where we are today, what we are focusing on, and where do our resources go. So this question moves us from declaration to facts. So every company wants to have a modern solution, invest in this advantage, in the automation, in the AI solution. But the real answer, what they are focusing on, is on their backlog and the team calendars. So when your energy is focused on the commodity, your strategy stays on the slides. And that's important to have a good view where we are focused, what we are focusing on. The question is important to know what we are doing, but it's also important to know that the maintaining commodity could be treated sometimes as a hidden cost. The hidden cost that you don't see as a separate line in the budget, but the hidden cost that you see when your team has no free time to spend on the areas that bring the value to the company, but keep maintaining things. So the goal is not to reduce the cost. It's move the energy to places where it generates unique value for the company.
That's a really good point you just made there about that talent. Yeah, really like that.
So moving next slide, we also prepare some sub questions that everybody can ask, trying to evaluate where we are today, what is our focus, are we focusing on our acceleration edge that we defined on the previous question, and that's what we can go back to the case that Michał presented. So we delivered the entire system in 6 months. It doesn't mean that we build the entire system in 6 months from scratch, from zero, because the commodity was obvious, like the tracking screen and then the courier apps. You can reuse that part from the proven core that already is working, and we know that you can rely on. When we know where is the advantage, the best team hours were spent to this advantage, to the where the client operation the difference, and then the night delivery success has been increased. So when we know what is our advantage and where we are with the effort to focus on that advantage, we can move to the third question that we have. And the third question is about AI, but in practice, it's more about your control over your own technology, because AI will not work if client has no access to data, to process, to the architecture. And AI become a feature that you have to wait from your vendor in that case. So moving to the next slide, we see that the AI is not just being for AI is not having the AI enabled label on my system. It's whenever you can build your own code, whenever you can run and train your own model on your own data. If that's closed, most important layer of future advantage is built outside of your control. So it's very important to understand how much access to our data, how much freedom from our architecture and our software we have to build that advantage based on the AI tools in the future. So as in the previous part, we also prepared the additional questions that may guide you through this process to answer the overall AI readiness question. And those questions are more focused on the reality check. So we are not trying to assess AI ambition from the company. More, we are focused whether the company can deliver a single AI feature in the real operation. So I have seen a lot of customers that want, the ETA predictions based on AI, chatbots that supporting dispatcher operations. But when we see deeper, they have a data spread among many vendors. They have deployment dependent on the current roadmap. And they have architecture that not allow easy changes. So ask one AI feature, and if your team answer will be months, that means it's not the AI problem. The problem is lack of software or data architecture that support AI features. So please ask those questions to your organization, to your teams, and try to assess how ready is your organization to use AI today, and how far we are from leveraging these opportunities in the future to build our advantage.
Interesting.
So if you gather the answers for this question, we can move from the question to decisions. So that's the goal of the entire exercise. So Michał, please move to the next slide. So the goal is not to run the big transformation, and we should divide our solution component per component and run this question for each component separately. When we have all questions for the given component, then we can drop it into this matrix, having the commodity versus advantage in one axis and the critical value of this component on the second axis. So what we receive, the questions help us to place the component on the matrix, and the matrix says what we should do. So those questions are not just the exercise to provide some assessment of current state, but guide you through the entire process and give you the answer what to buy, what to build, what to lease, and when use AI, and if we are ready to use AI.
Very good questions there. Very good questions.
So please, Michał, please next slide. Please try use this tool. We are eager to help you with that. If you have any questions, please contact us, and we are available to help you.
Well, thanks, guys. It's been really interesting. We sort of thank both Michałs for sharing your knowledge and experience on what is actually a really interesting topic that we discussed today. Just to sum up, I guess, what can our audience take away from this session? I guess it's fair to say that we've seen that many of last mile delivery companies are embracing the need to drive efficiency using data, using AI. It is complex. However, there is a big opportunity to do more and build those key differentiators that you've spoken about, and sharing all those questions that they could take back to their organizations. Really interesting. Thanks so much for that. We've got a couple of questions come up. Perhaps we can get your insights into those. Our first one is from Tobias. Tobias says, I have a legacy system, so why not rewrite it all with AI agents and not pay for licenses and extra bill costs? Oh, interesting question. Thanks, Tobias. How would you answer that, guys?
I will try to tackle this one. So I think there are two factors to take into the consideration. Of course, it is something you can do, but the question is, should you? And the first factor I will take directly from the decision matrix. So considering the system, the legacy system is the business critical system. From my perspective, it shouldn't be completely rewritten as it's business critical. It's the stakes of the risk are very high. So probably it's not the best way to do it. And the other one is more important from my perspective. So the question is, because it's a legacy system, probably it was designed a couple years ago, maybe 10 or even 20. The question is, does the business processes that are covered in that system are up to date right now, and are these processes made for the company that was 10 years ago, or are they made are you going to have a new software that is made for the company of today, or even from from tomorrow. And I think that during rewriting the legacy software, the most important part is to update also the business processes and the ways the software work, not only rewrite the code.
I think that's a really interesting point that you've made. Just rewriting an old platform doesn't then suddenly make it a really good
old problems, but in the new.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I suppose, like, if our audience follow that process, all those questions that Michał brought out, it would probably start to answer some of those questions, wouldn't it, about what they're trying to do as a company as well, where they're trying to go. So yeah, good. Thanks for that one. And then we've got a question from Adam, and he says, how does the build by modular dilemma change with scale of a company?
Okay, maybe I try to answer this question. It's very good because we don't directly answer the differentiate the answer depending on the company size. And the short answer will be the most common, consultancy answer. It depends. But to be more specific, of course, if you go through the tool we provide, ask the questions, and you will find the answer that if the company is quite small and the operation is not the crucial part of building the customer advantage on the market, because the delivery is pure commodity, and we build the market advantage on the different areas of our business. So that's obvious. The obvious choice for that kind of company is going to buy or lease ready product, because it's stable, we can use it, the volume is not big, so we don't pay the volume taxes, and that's the case. If even small company is building the business on the delivery that need to be different from the competition, that you want to bring some additional value to the market, to your customers, then you should start thinking about the building and owning that part, because then you can maintain this advantage during the time and keep this advantage also in the future when the market changes, when the customer expectations are changing. And of course, when the company is growing, the answer is moved from the buy more to the build, because of this advantage and building the advantage amongst the competition. But also, when your scale is growing, your operations are bigger, you try to find an optimization during this operation to make it more efficient. And I remember one project when we reduced the number of clicks in the courier application from 7 to 4, and that saves about 1 second for each delivery. But when you have 10,000 couriers and each delivers in average 100 parcels, then it's a lot of hours saved every day for the additional capacity, for example, for the additional packages. So you need to be also competitive in the cost effectiveness side, and with the leased software, buy software without any chance to adjust it to make it to support our changes, it will be very difficult. So the answer is, if the volume grows, if the company grows, there is also more need to have the own solution that can be adjusted to our needs and to our optimization process.
Yeah, that's really key. And I think so, really understanding your strategy and where you're trying to go, and having that flexibility to be able to expand, and have total control over what to do. Yeah, really key. So that brings an end to our QA section. Thanks, guys, for your insight into that. In fact, it brings an end to our webinar today. It's gone so quick. Can we just say to our audience that if there is anything in this webinar that perhaps you've missed, you want to watch again, it will be available for you very soon. We just want to say a huge thank you to both Michał for all your insights on the topic of looking beyond the traditional build versus buy model in the last mile software. We really appreciate that. If you have any questions specific to your organization, or you require assistance with your strategy, your implementation, then please feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to help you out. So I want to say thank you to everyone in the team, those working behind the scenes, running the webinar for us. But most of all, we'd like to say thank you to you, our audience, for joining us here today. We hope that this has been insightful and informative, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good, guys.